What if the man you marry isn't who he seems? Amina thought she was marrying a humble farmer, but her husband Kofi has a secret: he's a billionaire. Will their love survive the truth and the pressure of family expectations? Watch the twist unfold in this powerful African tale of love, sacrifice, and unexpected secrets. In a small, dusty village nestled deep within the heart of Africa, there lived a girl named Amina. Her home was humble, a simple hut made of mud and thatch. Her family, though loving, was poor. Every day, Amina woke up before dawn to help her mother fetch water from the well and tend to their small farm. Her father had passed away when she was young, leaving her mother to raise her and her younger brother, Tund. Amina had always dreamed of a life beyond the struggles of the village, a life filled with hope and opportunity. But fate had other plans for her. She was known for her beauty, kindness, and intelligence, and it wasn't long before the elders in the village began to discuss her future. In the village, marriages were often arranged by the elders, and Amina's mother was no exception. One day, the village chief, a wise and respected elder named Chief Olufemi, called for a meeting in the central square. As the villagers gathered, he spoke of Amina's bright future and the need to marry her off to a young man who could care for her and ensure her well-being. "Young Amina has grown into a fine young woman," said Chief Olufemi. "It is time for her to marry. We must ensure that she is given a chance for a good life. There is a man among us who is a good match for her, though he is not as wealthy as others may be. But he is hardworking and honest." Amina's heart sank. She had never met this man, and she had always hoped to marry for love, not out of obligation. She looked at her mother, hoping for some sign of support, but her mother's face was clouded with worry. They were poor, and a marriage to anyone, even someone she didn't know, might be the only chance for Amina to escape their difficult life. As the chief continued, he spoke of the man's name, Kofi. Amina's stomach twisted in confusion. She had heard of Kofi, but only as a humble farmer. He was often seen tending to his small plot of land at the edge of the village. He was quiet and reclusive, and many wondered why he didn't take part in village gatherings or celebrations. No one knew much about him, except that he kept to himself. The chief smiled warmly as he spoke of Kofi's sincerity, though he made no mention of his wealth or status. "Amina," her mother whispered softly, "this is our chance. We must do this for the family." Amina had no choice but to obey. With a heavy heart, she agreed to the marriage. The wedding would be arranged in just a few days, and though she tried to fight the tears, she couldn't stop herself from feeling the weight of the future pressing down on her. As the villagers celebrated the announcement of the upcoming wedding, Amina found herself lost in a swirl of thoughts. She did not love Kofi, nor did she know him well. All she could do was hope that he would be kind and treat her with respect. But what no one in the village knew, not even Amina, was that Kofi was no ordinary farmer. Beneath his humble exterior, he was a secret billionaire, a man of wealth and influence far beyond anything the village could imagine. And he had his own reasons for staying hidden in the shadows. Amina would soon discover that her life, and the life of the village, was about to change forever. The wedding day arrived, and the sun rose over the village with a golden glow. The air was filled with excitement, though a sense of unease lingered in Amina's heart. As the villagers gathered in the central square to witness the ceremony, Amina could barely contain her nerves. She wore a simple dress made of the finest cloth her mother could afford, and her hair was braided into intricate patterns, but her heart was heavy. Kofi stood at the altar, waiting for her. His appearance was modest, his clothes plain, his posture humble. To Amina, he seemed just as ordinary as everyone else in the village. He did not smile or speak much, instead standing quietly with his head bowed, as if lost in his thoughts. As Amina walked toward him, she noticed the quiet murmurs of the villagers. Some were whispering about her beauty, others about her good fortune in marrying such a respectable man. Yet none of them seemed to know the true story behind Kofi. The ceremony proceeded without incident. The chief spoke the words of union, and the villagers cheered as Amina and Kofi were pronounced husband and wife. Amina forced a smile, though her heart was filled with confusion. She had no idea what her future held with this man, who seemed like a stranger to her. Later that evening, as the sun dipped behind the horizon and the village celebrated with music and dancing, Amina found herself alone with Kofi in their small hut. It was nothing like the lavish home she had imagined for herself in her dreams. It was simple, just like Kofi. "Are you happy?" Kofi asked softly, his deep voice carrying a hint of concern. Amina looked up at him, unsure of how to answer. She had spent so much time worrying about the future that she had never stopped to ask herself that question. She knew that happiness was a far-off dream, not something she could hold in her hands. She nodded gently, though doubt lingered in her eyes. The night was quiet, save for the distant sounds of laughter and drums from the village celebration. Amina couldn't sleep. She turned over in bed, staring at the ceiling, her mind racing. What did Kofi really want from her? And why had he kept to himself all these years? The next morning, Kofi woke early and left the hut before dawn. He didn't explain where he was going, and Amina, still unsure of what was happening in her life, stayed behind. She had no idea that this would be the beginning of a new and strange chapter in her life. Days passed, and Kofi remained elusive. He would often leave before Amina woke up, returning only at night. He never discussed his business or activities, and though Amina had questions, she hesitated to ask. But one afternoon, after weeks of solitude and uncertainty, Amina made a decision. She was going to follow him. She had to know what he was doing. She had to understand why he had so much mystery surrounding him. One bright morning, while Kofi was preparing to leave once again, Amina slipped quietly out of their hut and followed him from a distance, keeping herself hidden in the tall grasses of the village outskirts. She kept to the shadows, careful not to be seen. She followed him through the forest and over hills, down dirt roads that twisted and turned, until they reached a place that was completely unfamiliar to her. Amina hid behind a large tree and watched as Kofi approached a massive, elegant mansion hidden in the woods, far away from the village. She gasped, her heart racing. How could he have such a home? How could this simple farmer, who barely spoke and wore ragged clothes, live in a mansion like this? Amina watched as Kofi walked into the mansion, greeted by well-dressed men and women who bowed to him respectfully. This was no ordinary house. It was a palace, a symbol of wealth that Amina had never imagined. Her mind spun with confusion and disbelief. As she watched from a distance, the truth slowly began to sink in. Kofi was not a poor man. He was not the humble farmer everyone believed him to be. He was someone powerful, someone with wealth beyond imagination, and yet he had chosen to live in secrecy, hiding in plain sight. But why? Amina felt a mixture of anger and betrayal rising within her. She had been married to a man who had deceived her, who had kept the truth from her. The more she thought about it, the more she realized that her entire life in the village had been a lie. But even as she stood there, staring at the mansion, she could not help but wonder what Kofi's secret life meant for her. What would happen when he found out that she knew the truth? Would he tell her why he had hidden his wealth? Or would everything unravel in a way that would shatter her heart? And so, Amina made a vow to herself: she would confront Kofi. She would demand answers, no matter the cost. The days following Amina's discovery were filled with turmoil. She couldn't get the image of the mansion out of her mind, the opulence, the wealth, the life Kofi had been hiding from her. She replayed the scene over and over in her head, trying to make sense of it all. Why had he chosen to live in such secrecy? Why had he allowed her to believe that he was just another poor farmer? Amina knew she couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine. She had to confront him, but the thought of facing him terrified her. What would he say? Would he try to explain himself, or would he become angry, accusing her of betraying his trust? She decided that the next time Kofi returned, she would not hide her feelings. She would demand answers, no matter the cost. But first, she needed to gather the courage to face him. Days passed in a blur of uncertainty, and finally, the moment came. Kofi returned one evening as the sun was setting, the sky painted in shades of red and orange. Amina had been waiting for him, standing by the doorway, her heart pounding in her chest. As he stepped inside, she didn't greet him with the usual warm smile or soft words. Instead, she stood silent, her eyes fixed on him, searching for the truth in his face. Kofi seemed startled by the change in her demeanor. He paused for a moment, then stepped closer, his brow furrowing in confusion. Amina, what is wrong? You look upset. Amina crossed her arms, her voice calm but firm. Kofi, I know what you're hiding. I followed you. Kofi's eyes widened, but he didn't speak. He was silent, waiting for her to continue. I saw the mansion, Kofi. I saw the people. I saw your wealth. Why did you keep it from me? Why did you make me believe you were just a poor farmer like the rest of us? Her voice trembled with a mixture of hurt and anger. For a long moment, Kofi said nothing. He stared at her, his face unreadable. Then, finally, he spoke in a low voice. Amina, I never wanted you to find out this way. Then why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you trust me enough to be honest with me? Amina's voice cracked, her frustration spilling over. Kofi sighed deeply, running a hand through his hair. He looked away, as though struggling to find the right words. When he finally spoke, it was with an honesty that startled Amina. The truth is, I've never wanted anyone to know who I am. I've lived this way for many years. The mansion, the wealth, it's all true. But I didn't want it to define me, and I didn't want it to change the way people saw me. People in the village, they only see what they want to see. They don't know who I am, and I've spent my life trying to keep it that way. Amina felt a surge of confusion. But why? Why hide it from me, Kofi? I'm your wife. Shouldn't I be the one person you trust the most? Kofi's eyes softened as he met her gaze. I didn't want you to marry me for my wealth. I wanted you to marry me for who I am, not for what I have. I thought that if I revealed my true self, you might only see me as a rich man and not as the person I really am. Amina stood there, processing his words. It was clear that Kofi had been living with his own internal struggles, torn between his wealth and his desire to remain humble. But the hurt in Amina's heart couldn't be ignored. I don't understand, she said quietly, the frustration still evident in her voice. I married you because I wanted to know you. I wanted to be with you. But now I feel like I don't know who you really are. You've built this wall between us, and I don't know how to break it down. Kofi took a step closer, his expression softening. I'm sorry, Amina. I didn't mean to hurt you. I just didn't want to change everything about us. I wanted to build something real, something pure. But now I see that I've only created distance between us. Amina looked at him, her heart torn. She had always wanted a life of simplicity, of love and connection, not one built on wealth and hidden truths. But at the same time, she couldn't deny that a part of her felt betrayed by Kofi's secrecy. She had trusted him, and he had kept such an important part of his life hidden from her. I need time, Kofi, Amina whispered, her voice shaky. I need time to understand who you really are, and I need to know if I can trust you again. Kofi nodded slowly, his face filled with regret. I understand. I'll give you the space you need, Amina. But I want you to know that I love you, and I will do whatever it takes to make this right. Amina didn't respond right away. She turned away, feeling a mixture of relief and sadness. She needed time to think, to process everything that had happened. The man she had married was not the man she thought he was. But the question remained, could she ever accept the truth? Could she ever love a man who had kept such a big part of himself hidden from her? As the night stretched on, Amina lay awake in bed, her thoughts swirling. She had always dreamed of a life with love and honesty, but now she wasn't sure what that life looked like anymore. The days following the confrontation were filled with silence. Kofi kept his distance, allowing Amina the space she needed to think. He did not press her for answers or ask her to forgive him. Instead, he continued his work as usual, leaving the hut early in the morning and returning late at night. Amina spent her days in a whirlwind of confusion, her thoughts consumed by the man she had married. She could not forget what she had seen, the mansion, the servants, the wealth. Yet, as she tried to understand Kofi's motives, a part of her could not shake the feeling of betrayal. He had kept this secret from her for so long. Why had he never told her the truth before? Was their marriage built on a lie, one that could never be undone? But there was also something else. Beneath the layers of confusion, Amina could feel a pull toward Kofi. His humility, despite his riches, had intrigued her. The way he had lived his life without flaunting his wealth, the way he had chosen to live among the villagers, all of it spoke to a man who wanted something deeper, something more meaningful than just material success. One morning, as the sun rose over the village, Amina stood at the edge of the well, lost in thought. Her mother had noticed her distraction and had been asking her questions about the tension between her and Kofi, but Amina had brushed them off, not knowing how to explain her emotions. It was then that Tand, her younger brother, approached her. He was a bright-eyed boy, always curious and full of energy. He had noticed the change in Amina's mood, and his concern for her was evident. Amina, he said gently, why do you look so sad? You're not like yourself these days. Amina sighed, her shoulders slumping. I don't know what to do, Tand. I feel like everything has changed, and I don't know how to fix it. Tand frowned, looking up at her with his big, innocent eyes. What happened? Why aren't you happy with Kofi anymore? Amina hesitated, unsure how much to explain to her younger brother. Kofi isn't who I thought he was, Tand. He's hiding something big. He's not the poor farmer I thought I married. He's a rich man. He's been keeping it from me, and I don't know why. Tand's eyes widened in surprise. A rich man? But that doesn't sound so bad, does it? Amina smiled softly, ruffling his hair. It's not about the money, Tand. It's about trust. He kept a part of himself hidden from me, and now I feel like I don't know him at all. I don't know if I can forgive him for that. Tand thought for a moment, then looked up at her. Maybe Kofi didn't want to hurt you. Maybe he thought if you knew, you wouldn't love him for who he is. Amina looked down at her brother, surprised by his wisdom. He was young, but he seemed to understand something important. Maybe, she said quietly, but it still hurts. Tand placed a hand on her arm, his expression serious. Amina, sometimes people make mistakes. But if you love him, maybe you can forgive him. Maybe it's not about the secret. Maybe it's about what you two can build together, even with the things you don't know. Amina was silent, her heart heavy with the weight of his words. Could she forgive Kofi? Could she move past the hurt and start again? Was their love strong enough to survive the truth? That evening, as the moon rose high in the sky, Amina found herself standing outside the hut, waiting for Kofi to return. Her heart was pounding in her chest. She had made up her mind. She needed to talk to him, to ask him the questions that had been swirling in her mind. She needed to understand him, to see if their love was still possible, despite the secrets that had come to light. When Kofi returned, he found Amina standing at the doorway, her face bathed in the soft light of the moon. He stopped in his tracks, his eyes searching hers, waiting for her to speak. "Amina," he said softly, his voice filled with uncertainty. Amina took a deep breath, her voice steady but full of emotion. "Kofi, I've been thinking. I can't pretend like nothing has changed. I can't ignore the fact that you've kept something so important from me. But I also know that I don't want to live in a marriage built on secrets. If we're going to move forward, we need to be honest with each other. We need to rebuild that trust." Kofi's expression softened, and he nodded slowly. "I know, Amina. I'm sorry. I should have told you the truth from the beginning. I never meant to hurt you." Amina looked at him, her heart torn between the hurt and the hope that maybe, just maybe, they could find a way to make things right. "I don't know if I can forgive you yet, Kofi. But I want to try. I want to understand you, to know you better. And maybe, in time, we can rebuild what we've lost." Kofi stepped forward, his eyes filled with sincerity. "I will do whatever it takes, Amina. I want us to be together. I want to show you who I really am, not just the man with wealth, but the man I am at my core." Amina nodded, her heart beginning to heal, piece by piece. "Then let's start again. Let's take the time to build something real. Together." Kofi smiled, a small, genuine smile that reached his eyes. "Thank you, Amina. I promise, I will never hide anything from you again." As the two of them stood together under the moonlit sky, Amina felt a glimmer of hope for the future. She didn't know what lay ahead, but for the first time in a long while, she felt like they could face it together. Days turned into weeks as Amina and Kofi worked together to rebuild their relationship. It wasn't easy. There were moments of tension, moments where the past seemed impossible to forget. But Amina had made a choice to try, to understand, and to move forward with Kofi. Slowly, they began to talk more openly, sharing pieces of themselves that had remained hidden for far too long. Kofi was more patient than she had ever known him to be. He would sit with her for hours, explaining his life, his choices, and the reason he had hidden his wealth. He spoke of how he had come from a family of great fortune, but how, from a young age, he had wanted to live a life free from the expectations that came with it. He didn't want to be defined by money, and he didn't want others to see him only for his wealth. He had chosen the simple life of a farmer to escape the constraints of his family's legacy. "I know it doesn't make sense," Kofi had said one evening, his voice tinged with regret. "But I didn't know how to make it work. I was afraid of losing myself, afraid that if I lived the life others expected of me, I would become someone I didn't recognize. And I didn't want you to marry me because of what I had. I wanted you to marry me because of who I am." Amina listened, her heart softening with each word. She understood, in a way, the burden he had carried. But there were still parts of him, parts of their relationship, that felt incomplete, unresolved. One afternoon, as they walked through the village together, Amina noticed that the villagers had begun to act differently toward her. They looked at her with curiosity, whispering behind their hands, their eyes filled with questions. She had heard rumors, whispers about her marriage to Kofi, about the man she had married who was not what he seemed. Some of the villagers had begun to wonder if she had known all along about Kofi's true wealth. Some even questioned whether she had married him for his fortune. The gossip stung. It was as if the trust she had worked so hard to rebuild was crumbling around her. Amina felt her confidence falter. She didn't want to be the subject of village talk. She didn't want her marriage to be reduced to a rumor or a scandal. That evening, she sat quietly by the fire, her thoughts consumed by the weight of the villagers' opinions. Kofi, sensing her unease, sat beside her. "Amina, what's wrong?" "They're talking about us, Kofi," she replied, her voice heavy with frustration. "The villagers, they don't understand. They're saying things about me, about us. It feels like everything we've worked for is being torn apart by their gossip." Kofi's expression darkened, and he took her hand in his. "I should have told them the truth from the beginning, Amina. I should have been open with everyone, not just you. I didn't think about how this would affect you." Amina shook her head. "It's not just about that. I'm not upset because of what they think of you. I'm upset because of what they think of me. They're making me feel like I'm some kind of opportunist, like I married you for your wealth. I don't want them to think that. I don't want anyone to think that." Kofi stood up, his jaw clenched with determination. "I'll put an end to it. I won't let them talk about you like that. You deserve better than their gossip." He turned toward the door, but Amina stopped him with a gentle touch on his arm. "No, Kofi. We can't fix this by confronting the village. We need to show them that what we have is real. We need to prove that our marriage is about more than money, that it's about trust, respect, and love." Kofi looked down at her, his eyes filled with both pride and regret. "You're right. But I don't want you to feel alone in this. I'll support you, Amina. And we'll face this together, side by side." The following day, Amina made a decision. She would meet with the village elders, those who had arranged her marriage and who had witnessed her union with Kofi. She knew the only way to stop the rumors was to confront them directly, to clear the air and make her intentions known. She asked Kofi to accompany her, but he hesitated. "Are you sure about this, Amina? It won't be easy. I have to do this, Kofi. For us. For me." And so, the two of them walked together to the village center, where the elders gathered each week. The villagers watched in silence as Amina and Kofi approached the group of respected elders sitting under the great baobab tree. The air was thick with anticipation, and the village felt smaller, more suffocating than ever before. Chief Olufemi, the village leader, stood up as they approached, his eyes filled with a mixture of respect and curiosity. "Amina, Kofi, what brings you here today?" Amina took a deep breath, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "I come to speak the truth. I've heard the rumors, and I can no longer remain silent. My marriage to Kofi is not about money. It is not about status. It is about love, trust, and the commitment we have made to one another. I married him because of who he is, not what he has. And I want everyone here to understand that." The villagers listened in silence, and for the first time in what felt like forever, Amina felt like she was being heard. She continued, her heart open and vulnerable. "I know many of you are surprised by the truth about Kofi's wealth. But that wealth does not define who he is, nor does it define our marriage. We are building a life together, and I ask for your understanding, your support, and your respect as we move forward." Kofi stepped forward, his voice strong and clear. "I've kept my wealth a secret for many reasons, but it was never about hiding from anyone. It was about living a life I could be proud of, one that wasn't defined by material things. I love Amina, and I will do whatever it takes to show her, and all of you, that our marriage is not built on money, but on a deep, meaningful connection." The silence that followed was heavy, but slowly, one by one, the elders nodded. Chief Olufemi, his face thoughtful, stepped forward. "Thank you, Amina, Kofi, for sharing your truth with us. We have heard your words, and we believe in your commitment to each other. We know that love is not something that can be measured by wealth. Your honesty is commendable, and we trust that you will continue to build a life that brings honor to your marriage and to our village." As Amina and Kofi left the gathering, Amina felt a sense of relief wash over her. The village had finally heard her. The rumors would no longer control her life. Together, she and Kofi had taken the first step toward healing the wounds caused by secrecy. But Amina knew that this was only the beginning. There were still many challenges ahead, challenges that would test the strength of their love and the foundation of their marriage. But for the first time in a long while, she felt hopeful. They had faced the truth together, and in doing so, they had built something stronger than the lies that had once threatened to tear them apart. The village, after hearing Amina and Kofi's truth, seemed to settle into a quiet calm. The whispers of gossip slowly died down as the elders' approval gave the villagers reason to accept the young couple's story. Life continued as it had before, or so Amina thought. But beneath the surface, something was brewing. Though the village had heard their truth, there were still some who could not let go of the idea that Kofi's wealth could have been used to manipulate Amina's feelings. And even more troubling, there were some who believed that the two of them had only come together because of the riches Kofi secretly possessed. These thoughts festered in the minds of the more skeptical villagers, and soon, a new wave of suspicion began to rise, fueled by jealousy and doubt. Amina felt it most in the way the women in the village treated her. They no longer greeted her with the same warmth, no longer invited her to the gatherings or work parties where they had once shared laughter. Instead, there was distance, a coldness that wasn't easily explained. One afternoon, while Amina was at the market, she overheard two women gossiping as they sold their goods. They spoke in hushed tones, but their words cut through her like a blade. Amina thinks she's so special now. She married a rich man, but who knows what Kofi really wants from her? Exactly. What kind of woman doesn't know her husband is hiding millions? She must have known all along. Amina's heart dropped. She couldn't bear the thought that the village still saw her as someone who had used Kofi for his wealth. She felt trapped by their judgments, by the constant whispers that followed her everywhere she went. Later that evening, as Amina sat alone in their hut, Kofi returned from his long day of tending to the fields. He noticed the tension in the air immediately. "What's wrong, Amina?" he asked, sitting down beside her. Amina didn't speak right away, her eyes fixed on her hands, clasped tightly in her lap. She knew she had to tell him what she had overheard, but part of her hesitated. She didn't want to worry him, didn't want to burden him with the way the villagers were treating her. But it was eating away at her. "I overheard something today," she said quietly, finally meeting his gaze. "The women at the market, they're talking about me. They don't believe that I married you for the right reasons. They think I married you because of your wealth." Kofi's face darkened. He reached out, gently taking her hands in his. "Amina, you know that isn't true. You know why we're together. And they don't know you, not like I do. They don't know the love we share." "I know," Amina said, her voice breaking. "But it's hard, Kofi. Every day, I feel like the village is turning against me. It's like no matter how hard we try, they'll never see us for what we really are." Kofi was silent for a long time, his gaze thoughtful. Finally, he spoke, his voice steady and calm. "Amina, I can change the way people think, but I can change the way I show my love for you. If they won't accept us, we don't need their approval. What matters is that I'm here for you, and you're here for me." Amina felt a rush of emotions at his words. She wanted to believe him, wanted to believe that together they could rise above the judgment of others. But the doubt gnawed at her. What if things didn't improve? What if they could never escape the shadow of Kofi's secret wealth? The next few days were filled with the weight of that uncertainty. Kofi, ever determined to support her, made efforts to involve himself in more village activities, hoping that his presence and actions would show the villagers that he was no different than the men who worked beside him. But the whispers didn't stop. If anything, they grew louder. Then, one evening, a storm rolled into the village. The winds howled, and the rain came down in sheets. It was the kind of storm that made the earth shake, and the sky was dark with thunder and lightning. Amina, trying to calm her thoughts, stood by the window, looking out at the raging storm. Just as the rain began to subside, a knock came at the door. Kofi stood up to answer it, but when he opened the door, he was met with a man from the village, a man Amina had not seen before, someone new. "Amina, Kofi," the man said in a low, grave tone, "I'm from the city. I have news about Kofi's family. It's urgent. There's something you need to know." Amina's heart skipped a beat. Kofi's face froze, his eyes narrowing in recognition. "What news?" The man stepped inside, his face shadowed by the dim light. He lowered his voice so only they could hear. "Your family is looking for you, Kofi. They want you to return. They've heard about your life here in the village, and they've sent me to bring you back." Amina turned to Kofi, her pulse racing. "Your family? But you said you left them behind." Kofi's face was pale. "I did. I didn't want their influence in my life. I wanted to live my own way, without their expectations. But they don't understand, Amina. They don't see me as the man I've become. They still see me as their heir, as someone who must carry on the family legacy." Amina felt a wave of shock wash over her. This wasn't just about their love anymore. This was about Kofi's past, a past that could destroy everything they had worked for. If his family found out where he was, if they came to the village, they might disrupt their lives. The life they had built together would be threatened. The man from the city spoke again, his voice firm. "They'll be here soon, Kofi. You need to decide, stay here with the woman you love, or return to your family and their world of power, riches, and expectations." Kofi stood there, conflicted, torn between his past and his future. Amina looked at him, her heart aching with the uncertainty of what was to come. "Whatever you decide, Kofi," she whispered, her voice filled with both fear and hope, "I will be here. But we must face this together. Whatever storm comes, we face it as one." Kofi took a deep breath, his face hardening with resolve. "I won't let them take me back. I won't let them tear us apart." But deep down, Amina knew that their love would be tested in ways they hadn't yet imagined. The storm outside was nothing compared to the storm brewing within Kofi's family, and nothing compared to the storm that was about to crash into their lives. The days after the man's visit felt like a slow unraveling. Kofi had made it clear to Amina that he was determined to stay in the village, to live the life they had built together. But the shadow of his family's arrival loomed over them both, and Amina couldn't help but feel the tension growing between them. The arrival of his family was inevitable, and Kofi was no longer the man he had once been, a man who could live a simple life without the weight of expectations. The morning of their arrival came sooner than expected. Amina awoke to the sound of galloping hooves and the low murmur of voices outside their hut. She rose quickly, her heart racing. She could hear Kofi's footsteps behind her as they both hurried outside to find out what was happening. Standing at the entrance to the village were several luxury carriages, polished, well-kept, and drawn by well-fed horses. A group of well-dressed men and women surrounded them, their expressions cold and calculating. At the front of the group stood a tall, imposing figure, a man with regal stature, wearing a suit of dark colors. He carried himself with an air of authority, and the way he looked at Kofi was filled with disdain and disappointment. Amina stood at Kofi's side, her heart pounding in her chest. She had never seen this side of Kofi's world. It was a world of power, wealth, and status, everything Kofi had chosen to leave behind. She felt the weight of his family's presence press down on her. The man who stood before them was none other than Kofi's father, King Adiwale, the patriarch of the wealthy family Kofi had renounced. "Kofi," King Adewale said in a deep, commanding voice. "I knew you would return one day. You cannot hide from your destiny forever." Kofi stepped forward, his expression hard. "I'm not returning to the life you've chosen for me, father. I've built a life here with Amina, and I am not going back." King Adewale's gaze shifted to Amina, assessing her with a cold, calculating eye. "So, this is the woman who has stolen my son from me. I see. A simple village girl who believes she can change the course of his life." Amina felt a cold chill wash over her at his words, but she refused to let it show. She straightened her back and met his gaze. "I am not here to steal anyone. I married Kofi because of who he is, not because of his wealth. And I won't allow you to come here and judge me." King Adewale smiled, but it wasn't a kind smile. It was a smile that seemed to mock her. "You speak boldly for someone who has no idea what she's gotten herself into. My son has a duty, Amina. A duty to our family, to our name, to our legacy. You have no place in that world. He doesn't belong in this village." Kofi's jaw clenched, and he stepped between Amina and his father, his voice filled with defiance. "I belong with Amina, father. Not in the world you created for me. I am not going back to your mansion, your parties, or your expectations. I've made my choice." The two men stood facing each other, their tension palpable. The rest of the family stood quietly, watching the exchange, their eyes filled with judgment. Kofi's mother, elegant and poised, stood slightly behind King Adewale, her face unreadable. Amina could feel the weight of the situation. This was no longer just about her and Kofi. This was about a battle between two worlds, one of wealth, power, and status, and one of simplicity, love, and freedom. Kofi had already made his choice, but the challenge was not over. His family would not let go of him so easily. King Adewale's eyes hardened as he looked at his son. "You are making a mistake, Kofi. You cannot run from your responsibilities. You are the heir to a vast fortune, and one day, you will be the one to lead this family. If you stay here, you will be nothing. A poor farmer. A nobody." Kofi's fists clenched at his sides. "I don't care about your fortune, father. I never wanted it. I've made my life here, and I've found something far more valuable than money. I've found love. I've found peace. And that is something I won't let go of." Amina stood by Kofi's side, her hand on his arm, feeling the strength of his words. She knew that this moment, this confrontation with his family, was not just a battle for Kofi's future, it was a battle for their love, their freedom, and the life they had chosen together. King Adewale turned to Amina with a look of disdain. "You have poisoned his mind, woman. You have made him forget who he is. You have no place in this world. If you truly care about him, you will let him go. You will let him return to the life he was meant to live." Amina's heart raced, but she held her ground. "I will never let Kofi go. He is not your possession. He is a man, not a legacy, and he has every right to live the life he chooses. And if that life is with me, then I will stand by him, no matter what." There was a long, tense silence. The storm clouds above seemed to mirror the storm that was raging between Kofi and his family. King Adewale stood unmoving, his eyes narrowed in thought. After what felt like an eternity, he spoke again, his voice colder than before. "You are making a grave mistake, Kofi. But it is your life. I will not force you to return to us. But understand this, if you stay with this woman, you will never be part of our family again. You will have nothing. No inheritance. No name. No legacy." Kofi looked at his father, his eyes filled with a deep sorrow. But he didn't hesitate. "Then I choose Amina. I choose my own path. King Adewale's face darkened. Without another word, he turned and walked back to his carriage, his family following closely behind. The villagers watched in silence, unsure of what to make of the scene that had just unfolded before them. As the carriages disappeared into the distance, Kofi turned to Amina, his face weary but resolute. I chose you, Amina, he said quietly, his voice filled with both relief and sadness. And I will never regret it. Amina stepped closer to him, her heart full of love. I chose you, Kofi. And together, we will build our own legacy. One that is built on love, not wealth. The storm had passed, but the true test of their love had only just begun. Kofi had made his choice, but now, they would have to live with the consequences. Would they be able to withstand the pressure from his family and the judgment of the world? Or would the weight of the past prove too much to overcome? The days that followed Kofi's decision were filled with change. The villagers, who had once whispered in doubt, now began to treat him with a new respect. There was a quiet understanding that Kofi had made a choice that few could imagine, to walk away from wealth and legacy in pursuit of love and freedom. Amina stood by his side through it all, her heart swelling with pride for the man he had become. But life, as always, had its challenges. As the weeks went by, the tension between Kofi and his family remained unresolved. They sent letters, trying to convince him to return to his place in the world of wealth and influence. But Kofi had made up his mind. His love for Amina, his life in the village, and the simplicity they had built together were worth more than any fortune or title. One evening, as the sun began to set and the warm hues of twilight bathed their little hut, Amina and Kofi sat together by the fire. They were no longer the people they had once been, torn by secrets, caught in the expectations of others. They had fought for their love, for the life they wanted to build, and in doing so, had found something deeper, something real. Amina, Kofi said softly, his voice filled with gratitude, I never imagined this life would be possible. When I walked away from everything, I didn't know if I could find peace. But with you, I found something that's worth more than anything I could have inherited. Amina smiled, her heart full. And I never imagined I could love someone so deeply. You've shown me that true wealth isn't found in gold or riches. It's found in the love we share and the life we choose to build together. Kofi reached for her hand, his eyes filled with determination. We've proven that we don't need anyone's approval to be happy. We don't need to live by anyone else's standards. Our love is our legacy. The wind gently rustled the leaves outside, and the sound of the village fading into the distance reminded them that they had everything they needed in each other. The village was slowly changing, too. People began to see the value in the choices Kofi and Amina had made, and some even started to admire the strength of their love. As the days turned to months, the family continued to send letters, but Kofi and Amina never wavered. They built a life that was truly their own. Kofi began to teach the villagers about sustainable farming practices, sharing his knowledge, and Amina became known for her kindness and wisdom. Together, they brought a sense of unity and hope to the village, showing everyone that true success wasn't measured by wealth, but by the connections we make and the love we share. Years passed, and the couple's love story became a legend in the village. The story of the man who gave up everything for love, and the woman who stood by his side, taught others that wealth could not buy happiness or fulfillment. The greatest treasure in life was the one thing that no one could take away, love. True wealth doesn't lie in material possessions or the titles we hold. The greatest treasure in life is love, loyalty, and the courage to choose your own path, even when it seems difficult or uncertain. When we live authentically, follow our hearts, and build relationships founded on trust and respect, we create the life that truly brings us happiness. If you enjoyed this story and believe in the power of love and following your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring African folktales. Comment below with your thoughts. Have you ever had to choose love over material wealth? We'd love to hear your story. Stay tuned for our next episode, and remember, the most valuable things in life can't be bought.